When you hear the rhythm, start to move.
Hi everyone, my name is Varia and this is Shameless Careers, a podcast about career change. Today I'm interviewing Petra. Petra was shameless enough to leave a big, very reputable, big name asset management firm to move into the area that she loves more, which is energy market consulting focusing on decarbonization. I'm particularly excited to have this conversation today because Petra is one of the few people who I know who really, really loves what she does. You know, sometimes people say, oh, the grass is always greener on the other side. There are pros and cons in each job that you do, so it doesn't really make a difference what you do, and it doesn't really make sense to change. Well, when I hear people saying that, Petra immediately comes to my mind. And I think, no, there is a difference, whether you're doing something that's in line with who you are versus not. So, Petra, thank you so much for joining me. And I can't wait to hear everything about how you decided to leave asset management. How did you decide that the focus on decarbonization is right for you? And also, like, what does it feel to love what you do so that other people who are potentially wondering, okay, do I love what I do? Do I not? Should I change or not? Kind of know which signals to watch out for as they think about what path could be right for them. So why don't we kind of start broad at a very high level? Could you please walk us through what your career path has been like, and we will take it from there.
All right. Thanks, Varia, and thanks for having me. And great introduction. So, yeah, as you said, so leaving university, I had just studied economics and I'd gotten a job at a big, reputable name. Everybody's very excited to, that you're going there. My family were all very proud. I was like, okay, great. It's what everybody has been dreaming of. Let's do this. I'm going to love it. And yeah, when I got there, it wasn't quite feeling right. I did give it, a couple of years and I did learn a lot. And, I enjoyed learning how to be a professional there. And it was a great start to my career in many ways, but it wasn't, clicking. It wasn't feeling right. And after 2 years, I felt like I had learned a lot, but I wasn't learning a lot. I wasn't learning that much more that was new or that much more that was exciting. And, you wake up every morning, go to work. I kind of really wanted it to be something that I was very excited about. And I wasn't really sure what the next step would be. Should it be something else in finance? Is it a different role within the same organization? But I was kind of reflecting on it. I hadn't really taken a step back at any point up to that point in my life to just think about what do I really want. For a long time, what I felt like I wanted aligned with everybody's expectations of what you should want and, the typical definitions of success, let's say. So I never really had taken a break to really think about what excites me and what do I like. So I thought at that point, I enjoyed my degree. Let's go back. I'll do a master's, spend the time doing the master's, both deepening the study into economics that I really enjoy, and also really thinking about, what's the right career for me and exploring different options relating to economics. And yeah, I effectively did that. And then used the time to kind of discover what economic consultancy was, and kind of the economic policy work that you can do, and specifically the focus on the energy sector that I then grew to love. So yeah, finishing the master's, I actually continued. I took a couple of more months of just to think about it and properly apply for jobs rather than like kind of rushing to do it side to side by my master's, which is what I had been doing the rest of my life up to that point, just kind of making sure I have the next step lined up and making sure, everybody's happy with what I'm doing and not really thinking about, am I happy with what I'm doing? It's more about, yeah. So then, yeah, I found a job in economic consultancy, and already before going there, learning about it, I kind of was excited by the idea of working in the energy market, primarily because right now there's a big push, obviously, on decarbonization, a lot of focusing to kind of transitioning to renewables. And I really wanted to work on that because it felt very impactful to me, and very exciting. And, I had also kind of really loved the sciences growing up, and it was a bit of a change going into economics in the first place back in high school. So I kind of felt like getting back in touch with some other aspects of my personality and some other aspects of what I enjoy, focusing on energy. So yeah, very early on my career in kind of economic policy consultancy, I focused exclusively in the energy market. And since then, I've been reaffirming that I do really love my job. And as you say, I love what I do. And obviously currently I'm on maternity leave. And I was talking about it with some other mum friends. And I did kind of say, being on maternity leave reminds you how if you are going to be going to work and leaving your child behind, right, you really want to be doing it for something that excites you and for something where you feel like you're making an impact, you're learning a lot, you have kind of those inspiring role models and people that you can learn from. So I'm, continuing to enjoy the space and continuing to be excited to kind of work on market design and policy development to kind of streamline decarbonization and change in the energy market. That's, I guess, in a nutshell, the career path.
So the question that popped to my mind is that you studied economics right in the beginning, correct? So originally that was the path that you ended up in. So your original degree was kind of quite aligned to what you want to do eventually. So I was wondering, how did this shift to asset management occur? And what do you think influenced this decision for you to go into asset management instead of staying within economic space?
That's a good question.
From the very beginning.
I mean, studying economics is kind of quite a general field and you can do a lot of things with it, right? And, choosing a career path was pretty much, for me at least, shaped by kind of what I knew and what was advertised to us as students at the time. So there were a lot of, big banks, asset managers, even consulting firms, but more on the management consulting that were, quite strongly advertising themselves to us as students. And I attended a lot of these events and, tried to find out more about what these companies were. And asset management did seem quite an exciting field. The reason I didn't really directly go into economic consulting at the time is because I wasn't aware of it really. It wasn't something that I had really thought about at the time. We were kind of being bombarded with all the other options, and finance felt like, a prestigious career. Everybody's expectations aligned with, oh, that's what you would do if you went into economics. And, focusing more on economics, I was thinking the only real option was academia, and I knew that I didn't want to do that. So I hadn't really realized there was the option of doing consulting that focuses on economics. And management consulting didn't really feel right for me either at the time. It didn't feel quantitative enough. And, in my current job, I do a lot of energy market modeling as well. I get that level of satisfaction of being able to build models and do something quantitative, which I also thought I would get from a finance job. So I think I hadn't really taken, that time to really think about what's the perfect job for me. And I hadn't kind of researched that a bit more openly. I was very much guided by what was advertised to us and marketed to us as students as options, and by what the other students and my family's kind of expectations were for what a good career would be with, what do I do with my degree? And I think I also got drawn a bit into the kind of rat race of, oh, well, you do your university, you do well, you find your internships, you do as many as you can, you make sure to get a good internship in your second year, and then, you get an offer from that, and you're, there you go, you've made it, you have a job lined up, that's it, everything's great. And, when I did get an internship in my second year at a big asset manager, and they offered me a job, I kind of, at the time, had a small amount of doubts that it wasn't quite right for me, but it was a cool place to work. There were a lot of interesting, very intelligent people there. Everybody was, wonderful as well to meet. And, everyone else's expectations, my family, my friends were like, oh, this is great. You've made it pretty much, right? So I sort of pushed down my own doubts of, is this quite right? And decided, I don't want to have to look for another job right now. I've got my final year to go. I want to focus on, finishing my degree and, getting a first, doing well, whatever. and not have to stress about finding another job and, not having a job potentially at the end of my degree. I was like very worried about not having the next step lined up. And I think sometimes you do need a bit of space to really think about it for yourself. And I wasn't giving that to myself at the time. I kind of thought, you need to have everything ready and everything needs to be aligned and everything needs to be perfect. And, by that point, everything had been aligned and everything that I was doing was in line with my family's expectations of success and, the world's expectations of success, let's say. So I hadn't really taken a step back to think about what would really make me happy and what do I really want and what would be my own definition of success.
Can we build on this? Because obviously now you have a baby. And what advice would you give to him when he grows up, particularly in relation to those expectations? Because this is a theme that comes up over and over again, that people get so distracted by what's prestigious and that defines what they do afterwards. So now that you have been through it and you have a child to whom you wish the best, how should he deal with this when he gets to the stage?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, ultimately, thinking about what I would say to my younger self and similarly to my baby, it's more about you sometimes kind of know, you have a gut feeling of what works for you and what doesn't. And I'm not saying you should discount every rational thought of, this is better than this or, but you should weigh the factors. Like, for example, I make a good living at my current job. I was making more money, or I could have made more money if I stayed in asset management, right? And that is an important consideration for the rest of your life, but it shouldn't be the only one if that's not what you personally find most rewarding, for example, right? And then what other people think, you really should not let define you. And, you shouldn't be spending too much time thinking about it at all, to be honest, because I find that sometimes your worst fears are true. For example, my family were very against the idea of me leaving my job. And I got a lot of comments of, why are you doing a master's? You already have a job. And, the next step for you is having a baby, not, doing a master's and looking for a different job. You've got a job and just ignore the rest. Or like, I never liked my job either from my dad. Why should you like your job? Stuff like that. So, sometimes what you think people think is true, but other times it's really not. And you're like building it up in your head of, they're really going to be disappointed in me and whatever. But ultimately, that might not even be the case. And you shouldn't spend time like overthinking about what other people think. You should be spending that time like trying to understand what works for you and what doesn't. Because that is what will make you happy. And, if you follow other people's advice against your own instincts, you may have regrets. And also, you may be feeling hateful towards them, even though they haven't really forced you. It's you who've made the decision to listen to their opinions or follow their expectations and try to meet them. So, yeah, I think it probably does depend on the person. Some people are more prone to like overthinking about others' expectations or kind of allowing family pressure to shape their decisions or, the world's pressure, whether it's your friends or your family or your own kind of imagined expectations of the world. It may not even be the real expectations. So both to my younger self and to my child, I would be saying, be shameless, as you say, and don't really think about what other people will think. Think about what you yourself would think in the future of your decisions and whether you'll be happy with those. And also, you know what? If it doesn't work out, you can also change again. It's something that kind of convinced me in a way to like do my own thing that, okay, say I take a year out to do a master's and then I realize I don't want to have a career in economics. I want to go back to asset management. Not the end of the world. Okay, I've taken a year out, careers are long. Or what if I had started working in economic consultancy and I really didn't like it? I could change again. It's not the end of the world to like, take a side road to getting wherever you were originally, if that ends up being the right thing. So yeah, that's my main message, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we overestimate oftentimes that kind of we think too seriously about a change that it's irreversible and that it will bring us somewhere and we can never go back. But actually, like, yeah, you gain experience. If anything, it may help you sell yourself more in the future. Like, yeah, I think maybe we're sometimes too pedantic and too rigid about the fact that, okay, I'm on track. I need to clear every step of the way perfectly to get this perfectly looking job on paper. But actually, there is more flexibility probably.
There is, I would say. I mean, it probably depends on the job. There's some jobs that, you may kind of take longer to get there if you've taken a side road. But at least for me, it felt like a risk that I was willing to take, that, okay, this doesn't feel right. And I need to try something different. And if this something different ends up also not being right, then I'll, make a change again. And yeah, I think ultimately careers are very long and we don't all need to be doing the same thing at all times. Your preferences may even change. So you may find the perfect career for you. And, 10 years down the line, you may be thinking, well, at this level of seniority, it doesn't feel right, or I want to do something very different. So you shouldn't be afraid to make a change if what you're doing makes you feel stuck or you're not fully happy with it. And I guess that goes to other areas of life as well. But obviously, in careers, there's a lot more kind of definitions of success or expectations that you might be thinking about. Or, yeah.
And one more question that I wanted to kind of follow up with. You've mentioned that there was some like family pressure that with people saying, look, like you have this amazing job, why do you want to leave? How did you deal with this back in the day? I mean, now reflecting back, you see that, okay, like you should always listen to yourself. Don't let this
Yeah.
get to you. But what would you recommend to a person in the moment to whom it really gets as we like at the moment? How should they process it? How should they react to this? Were there any kind of psychological tips that kind of helped you deal with this in that moment?
I mean, you're right. It was quite difficult. I think my mental health definitely suffered at that time because I was used to kind of being the perfect child and, the perfect student and all that. And everybody being very happy with me and everything is like amazing. Oh, you're doing great, and actually having my own preferences align with other people's expectations, because I wasn't necessarily making the choices I was making for other people at the time, but kind of incidentally, my own choices aligned with, my family's expectations and I guess the world's views of success. Um, and yeah, I think to an extent it was that I was trying to kind of tell people that, you telling me that is very hurtful. And I think that doing a master's is not a thing to be ashamed of. And I feel like that this is right for me. I mean, the other thing was that I was lucky enough to be able to self-fund it. So I didn't have to ask my family for support financially for something that was against their wishes as well. So obviously I had a very good job and I had savings. That part was a bit stressful, but it ultimately I knew that, for a while I had kind of tried to ignore my own feelings and listen to my dad's advice, let's say, for example, on, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, you should, if you really want to go back to school, you should be doing an MBA because that will help your career in finance, and that sort of advice. But it kind of made me a bit resentful and angry at him when ultimately he wasn't really doing anything. He was telling me his opinion. I was allowing his opinion to kind of shape what I was doing. And it was actually damaging our relationship rather than helping us have a better, more meaningful relationship. But whereas when I kind of said, listen, I really want to do this, and I heard your advice, but I don't want to take it. And, it's hurtful to me for you to be continuing to give me this advice. Let's just kind of drop it. And you need to be prepared that people will not necessarily respect your opinion, or they may not actually listen to you when you say, I no longer want to hear the criticism. Yeah, so I even remember once I overheard my grandma talking to a friend of hers on the phone, and she was saying, "Oh, my granddaughter, she works at a big asset manager firm, and she's doing all these great things." And then, when she hung up, I said, "Oh, grandma, like, why did you say that to your friend? I no longer work at this asset manager's. I am doing my master's, and that's nothing to be, ashamed of. And she was saying, oh, it's none of their business, and they don't need to know you're doing this master's. And I was saying, why? And she was like, oh, they might as well know that you're working at this firm, and what's the difference, and what's it to you? Can't you just be telling my friends and people here that you're still working there? It basically didn't really make sense to me, but it felt like she was ashamed of me and my choices, which was the first time I had that feeling. For a long time I felt like, she's proud of me, she's very happy. But yeah, and then in fact she continued lying to people about it, which I found really difficult, because I did find myself once in a situation where I had to kind of play along with the lie, because she had just told it, and I didn't really know what to do. And I think nowadays I would have been a bit stronger and said, no, actually I no longer work there, I've taken a break to do my master's, and I'm rethinking my career choices. And ultimately, at least in my case, it kind of worked out, and my family are now very happy, but kind of accepted what I do anyway, and they're happy with that, and the criticism stopped. It was intense for a few months, let's say, but then people drop things. They see that you're doing well, they see you're happy. That's ultimately what people care about. They may be giving you advice or pressure, but ultimately what they really want is for you to be happy. They may just be thinking, oh, well, this is how she will be happy.
Yeah.
If she's doing well and if she's in a big company that she's making enough money on, we don't want her to be unhappy. And that's where it's coming from. So you should be focusing on that's what's behind the messaging. And, in conflict situations, you should really be saying, oh, yeah, I know that what you're saying is intended as helpful, and that you are trying to make sure that I will be happy and successful in life. And thank you very much for that. But I feel like it will be better served in this way, or, for me, it's really important to do this. Anything goes wrong, I'll fix it,
I think with parents, it's so difficult to kind of assess their behavior, because to your point, indeed, they're coming from a good place. But I think they always assume that the safest, most prestigious, well-recognized in the society, job is the one that makes you happiest. And if your opinion goes opposite that, they would think, oh, you probably just don't know, you're not experienced enough, you don't know what you're talking about, this is what makes you happy. And this is making it so difficult to kind of reconcile this good intention towards you, but on the flip side, inability to hear that you're telling them, look, I'm not happy in what I do right now, I'll be happier there. And they'll be like, no, but we know what's the best for you. You should be doing that other thing. And you're like, okay, that's crazy, because I don't even know what attitude to have to the statements, because on the one hand, they want the best for me, but then they don't hear me. And I think it just leaves you in a difficult situation, right?
Yeah, but I think you encounter those difficult situations a lot with whatever choices you're making, right? And you can't let other people define, your choices in life. They may be unhappy that you're living in the UK, for example, versus your own country, or they may be unhappy with where you've chosen to buy a house. People may be unhappy with many things in life, and careers are one of them. And I do think that in some ways there is more pressure, because a lot of, at least families, at least in my case, they place a lot of importance on what you do, on, how successful you are, or how happy you will be in the future, and how good your life is likely to be. And then they do tend to have, at least people my parents' generation, and definitely my grandparents, different views on how you should view work. So for them, I think it was, okay, I do something that I can do well in and provide for my family, or I can do well in, and, it doesn't need to be fulfilling. And I did hear that, particularly from my dad, for example. He was saying it took me 10 years at the same company to actually start to enjoy it. He said, when I first got a job, I cried myself to sleep every day. I hated it so much. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he said. Sometimes he exaggerates. And he said, look at me now. I love what I do. You just need to persevere. Eventually you'll love it. I mean, who knows if that would have been the case. But, I felt that you will do better at something you feel passionate for. So if you're worried about being successful or doing well in your job, right, it's very hard to motivate yourself for something you don't enjoy. Whereas something that, is really meaningful to you and, stimulates you intellectually, you actually enjoy, you feel like you're making a positive impact, it's easier to work hard at, or it's easier to kind of do well at least in my opinion, you know. So if you are career driven, you can also think of it as, you know, it's self-serving, and it will serve my career to be doing something that I like, because I will actually put in the time for that, and I will be passionate for that, and I won't have to be forcing myself to kind of remain informed about topics that are related to finance, let's say, or, you know, work hard at something that I'm not as keen on.
Yeah, and you won't be afraid of taking on more challenging tasks.
Yeah.
For example, I read a book which said that there was someone who was pursuing a career of being a surgeon, and he faced this situation where he and his colleagues were like facing a case which was more difficult and not trivial, and they had to operate someone, and it was like more like not straightforward case. And his colleagues were like, "Oh, that's amazing! Like, it's such a challenging task. We'll figure out how to do it." And he was like, "Oh God, like this is so challenging. I'm not really sure. Like, I'm not interested in doing something that's like has a high level of complexity." And I found this example so powerful because indeed, like if you enjoy something and you face a non-trivial problem that's a bit more complex, that requires creativity, you're like, right, okay, I'm gonna learn something. You're kind of excited about it. But if you don't want to go near it, of course you'll be less successful than other people who will like jump up and say, okay, let me figure this out.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also think, you know, it's a bit of the, you know, question of how talented you are at something versus how much you kind of persevere and keep trying. And I think if you have passion for something, obviously being talented will help. But at least in my view, the people that will do well at the end and will be successful is not just, okay, yeah, you're good at finance, you can do well at it. You do need to have, you know, an ability to do the job, but also wanting to do it will help you kind of keep trying and striving to improve yourself, and eventually like the one that perseveres and keeps going even when there are challenges, you know, is the one that will learn more and be more adaptable and do well. So I actually do say that to my little boy a lot about very trivial things like learning to grab toys, or like keep trying, you'll get it, you know, and you know, that is more important at times, like keep striving at something, even if it feels challenging, because you can learn and you can rise to the challenge. And when you are passionate about something, and you are kind of excited about that challenge, you will more easily rise to it.
And how did you, so if we go back to this time when you kind of were not super happy in asset management, can you tell me kind of what gut feeling did you have back then around the direction where you possibly want to take next? Like you decided to do masters, but what did you know back then, and what did you decide to do to explore your potential options?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, at the time I thought I need time to think about what I need and what I like and what I don't like. And I also thought, well, I enjoyed my degree and I enjoyed learning about economics. So what will buy me time and, you know, kind of allow me to explore something I enjoy? And I thought, okay, you know what, I'll do a master's. Because if I am more likely to want to do a career that involves more economic knowledge if I really enjoyed economics. And I think I wasn't brave enough to think about other career choices at that point. If you know what I mean, I just kind of thought I should have a next step. I can't just like quit and take a month to think about it. I was still a bit like, okay, I need to find a next step that allows me to have time. I think, you know, when I did join the company that I did in economic consulting, in the end, they were like, oh, it's interesting. Like, why didn't you just apply? Why did you feel like you needed to do the master's? Because we do hire without masters, right? Because I was talking to them about, oh, you know, so I did the master's to kind of prove that I am interested in economics and to have time to think about it. But they were like, oh, we would have definitely hired you anyway if you know, had the courage to apply, I guess, to something that, you know, you may think that you're not a perfect fit for yet, but you can be. So I think that's actually another piece of advice I'd give to myself, that, you know, not everything has to be perfect for you to make that change. There's a lot of skills that are transferable and you can do it regardless. And that sometimes you do need to be brave, because even after I finished my master's, I wasn't quite sure. And thankfully, I kind of had grown through that year. And I had grown enough to like trust myself to to actually take a month or two to just like research what the options were for me in terms of careers, and actually think about, what are the sort of things that I would like in a career. I would like it to be client facing. I would like it to have interesting challenging tasks to solve. I would like, a quantitative aspect, because I find that, intellectually stimulating. I like the idea of different projects, so you keep learning new things. And at the time, I hadn't really thought about the energy market aspect. But when I started reading about economic policy consulting as an option, I realized you can also specialize in different sectors. And, I had a long-standing interest in decarbonization and kind of in the sciences as well, more generally. But I thought, oh, you know what, that kind of combines my love for economics and my interest in kind of like renewable energy and decarbonization. So maybe I can get a bit of both, and also, meet my other criteria for a dream job, let's say, of having that relatively fast pace, keep kind of being intellectually stimulated, keep learning, having, the client-facing aspect of, supporting a client in making a change. So I think it's hard to know what you want, and sometimes you do just need to try it. But I think you do also need to allow yourself to really think about it. And I think I could have done it without doing the masters. I think I could have just, if I had, been brave enough, I guess, in some ways, to think, okay, I really don't want this. I just need to think about the next step. And I'll take a risk and apply for something that I think might work best. I wouldn't have necessarily fit the box of masters preferred, but I had a lot of the skills that would have worked for that job. And obviously they do also value professional experience. So yeah, I think sometimes you don't need to fit, you don't need to complete the checklist that somebody may have on a job advert 100%, because firms do hire different people who come from different areas with different experiences, right? And if you, meet enough of the criteria, you can definitely do it. Yes. Or at least you can try, and, you're not really losing anything by trying. You might meet the right people and they might advise you on what you need to do to get there. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, you'll just get more information about the reality, and if something is not, if there is some criteria that you're not meeting, at least directionally what you should fix in order to try again, for example.
Yeah.
And so you've said that, it's really hard to know what you want. And it sounded to me like kind of the way you approached it is you, first of all, allowed yourself time. You took a step back, took this year to kind of figure out what you want to do. And then you almost like pieced together different kind of puzzle pieces of what you enjoyed, what type of work you enjoy. And to me, it sounded like it can both be like something that's skill set based, something a bit more abstract, like I like project work, client facing work, but also something about like the area of expertise that you're interested in, like, okay, decarbonization, some other things that you enjoyed. And then kind of you almost like have it and all these puzzle pieces together, and then you try to see, okay, like what type of jobs could fill a lot of those puzzle pieces. And probably what's helpful here is to speak with as many people as possible from different areas to learn also what's possible and kind of map what your puzzle pieces are with what the options that are available.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I attended a lot of career fairs at different places, different types of fairs. I spoke to lots of people doing different types of careers. And I did, think about, does that feel like something that I will like? And sometimes it's a bit of a gut feeling that, this sounds really exciting and this sounds like an area that I would be really interested in. And, making an impact is important to me. And particularly in energy right now, the big topic is decarbonization. And I think that that's a positive change you can make in the world while at the same time satisfying, your own need for intellectually curious tasks and the ability to work on interesting projects. So you do need to kind of know that the options exist. So in my first degree, I didn't know that this option existed, and I hadn't spent the time finding out about it, but I also hadn't met the right people that would have talked to me about it. And the second time around, I did spend a lot of time discovering what's out there as an option. What are the career options you can have as an economist, or as a person, really, because and yeah, meeting the right people definitely helped. But also, you kind of need to think about, as you said, what works for you, and you need to have an idea of, would this job work for me or not, or would it really satisfy me or not. But yeah, if it doesn't work out, you can change it, or you can make a change when you're there. So, for example, before going into economic consultancy, I did feel like, oh yeah, decarbonization is a great area that they do work in, but I wasn't sure that I would be 100% into the energy market, because they do tend to work in other interesting sectors as well, like transport, water, health economics, development economics. They all are interesting fields. And up front, I was like, okay, it sounds like a great job. It sounds like a lot of interesting areas that you can work in. And I know that there's at least one area that I have prior interest in, but I'm willing to try a variety of sector specializations, and then see, whether that actually feels right for me or not. But, very early on, I think either my first or second project, I did an energy project, and I absolutely loved it. And I thought to myself, this is 100% right. I'm doing this and I'm focusing on this. And I don't care about the other sectors. If I can, which, sometimes it's important that you know what you want, but you may not be able to get it, right? So you also need to speak up. So in my company, I said, listen, I've done this project. I loved it. I want to only do energy. I know that at first I said I wanted to try different sectors. I don't really want to do that. Is that possible? And I had very supportive colleagues, particularly in the senior management of the company I worked at the time, where they were like, okay, yeah, you're clearly quite good. We can see that you're passionate about this sector. We're happy to keep giving you energy projects, and as long as obviously the business needs allow it. And yeah, so you need to be going after what you want in addition to knowing what it is, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it's so interesting how your attitude during, that's what maturity is to me. We almost all start, I can totally relate to the start of your career. When you're at the university, you if someone tells you, listen to yourself, you'd be like, what? No, I'm going for the most prestigious thing that's out there. And then you kind of forget about exploring and doing due diligence, listening to yourself. You just go for the most prestigious thing. And that's the mistake all of us make. But then now that you have kind of taken a step back, you know that your main goal right now is to get a master's and really find what you want to do in life. It's so interesting how the attitude towards this search is completely different, versus your bachelor's degree. So instead, you were speaking with many people, exploring as many options as possible, and then almost paid attention not to the prestige factor, but does it resonate with you? What do you feel towards it,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was a very different job search the second time around. And in fact, I only applied to 2 places, whereas the first time around, I applied everywhere. Literally every good job that I thought was a good job, I went for, And the second time I was like, okay, I really like the sound of this company. I really like what they do. I really like their past projects, and I really like this place, and I really like what they do. And, I've spoken to enough people from both places to think that they would be great places to work, as well as they do interesting work. They focus in fields that I'm interested in. The type of projects and the type of clients align with what I like to do, and I'm really going to go for it. And, I got both of those jobs quite easily, I would say, because it really, I could convince them that I really have thought about it, and I know what they do. I know why I'd be good at it. And, it's different from kind of doing the theoretical job search at the first degree of, there's all these different jobs. They all sound great, or they all sound prestigious enough, let's say. And I can just talk the talk of convincing an interviewer, but it's different from really meaning it as well. And I think people can also see that. And sometimes, as I said, when I did get the job, I think one of my colleagues now had said, oh, why didn't you just apply? Why didn't you do the master's? Because clearly you're very good at it, or you clearly would be a good fit. And yeah, I just, as I said, I didn't think that I could, but people are more willing to take a risk on you if they can tell that, you are interested in this and you are passionate about it. And, yeah, maybe you come from a slightly unconventional background of, okay, I went into kind of finance and asset management. That is a really different direction. But I had clearly looked into it, and I could talk about why I really don't want to do that anymore. And I actually really want to do something more related to economics, and particularly economic consulting. And, specifically, they did ask you to think about sectors ahead of time. And I had thought about the energy market as an option. And, I could talk about interesting projects they'd done that I liked in that space and why I'm passionate about that sector as one of the options.
When you were speaking about energy sector, your face lit up.
Yeah.
And which reminded me of another kind of tip and signal that other people tell you to pay attention to when you look for the things that you want to do. Basically, there is a phrase that goes, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Yeah.
And to me, your reaction when you speak about, you're speaking about other sectors, you're like, yeah, it could be different, could be you could pursue different options, and you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. But then when you had this experience, that, okay, this is something that I want, I'm super excited about, you almost then don't doubt.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a matter of kind of keep searching until you get this feeling that, yeah, that's right for me. I'm excited until you yourself won't have any questions about it,
Yeah. And, sometimes there might be other feelings of, guilt, or I'm thinking I'm disappointing somebody else or whatever. You just need to ignore the rest. Is noise, right? The real thing is what is right for you. And you're the only one that will be the judge of that. And, you do need to be kind of listening to yourself, I guess. But it's important, and it does pay off in terms of being happy with what you do. And, as I said, now I have a child, and obviously I'm ending my maternity leave very soon. And I do really want to be going back to something that I'm excited about. And I am, not spending time with my child, not spending time with family, but for something that I still find meaningful. And I want to, every day going in, knowing that I really want to do this. And it's something I'm really excited about. And, it still gives me a lot of, meaning and pleasure in many ways to be working at what I do, and making the impact that I feel like I am, and doing well. It's not just doing well to tick off a box. It's doing well for yourself as well, to kind of be excited about, and feel like you're doing good in the world. At least in my case, that's how I see at least some aspects of our job, if not everything.
This actually brings me to the last question that I wanted to ask you. How important is big purpose in the job? Because there's a lot of talk now about purpose, saving the world, and you can find two extreme opinions on that. Some people will say, oh no, that's not as important, it's some abstract talk. But some people are really driven by purpose and making a difference to the world. So what is your reaction to it? What role does this bigger purpose, and your purpose in your role is quite big, like decarbonization, what does it play?
So
what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's more about what feels right to you as a purpose, because there's many different ways you can define purpose. So in my current job, as I said, I find purpose in kind of working on decarbonization related projects, and kind of climate change is a big topic, big reason to strive for change, etc. But the impact that I make day to day on an individual project is still measurable in kind of far away tasks. Whereas we have colleagues that work in health economics, and the impact they make, for example, they worked on a project relating to the COVID vaccines, or they worked on kind of malaria vaccine type projects, is measurable in literally potentially lives saved. They can actually measure that impact on, we've gone to this health center, and I think our work helped prevent X amount of people getting sick, X amount of people dying. To them, that's a direct impact, and they find that that's the most motivating thing they can have. To me, okay, yeah, that's great, but it feels even more impactful to be working for something, even though it's not that direct. Working on good design on policy, for me, is very meaningful, because in the future it will actually help us invest more in renewables right now, or achieve the right goals faster. But to somebody else, they might not be able to see the impact as directly. And to somebody else, they might be thinking, okay, I'm in asset management, I help pensioners have better value on their investments, and I am doing something good. So to them, that might also be a great purpose. And it might be meaningful. So I personally think you should have purpose and you should feel like what you're doing is meaningful. And to me, I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't be able to be happy any other way. But what works for you as purpose and what you find meaningful will be different to many people. You know, to somebody, it could only be by saving lives as a surgeon, in the example you said, or it could be, my current housemate works in like a kind of film and music charity. And for him, that's meaningful because he's promoting the arts in many ways, right? And he feels that that improves everybody and enriches everybody's life. And to him, that's purpose. Different people have a different definition of it, in the same way as you should allow yourself to understand what, your true purpose is at work.
Which comes back to the self-exploration that we talked in the beginning. The purpose answer, it's not the purpose. The question of purpose will not be answered by anyone else but you.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be a narrow definition. It's a wide definition. Purpose can be many things, and you just need to find it.
Thank you, Petra. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining me. Great
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it as well.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening. Subscribe, like, share. Please do all of these amazing things. And until next time,
When you hear the
be
rhythm,
shameless.
start to move.
Go, 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 go.
But according to our investigators' report, we find that Mr. Green doesn't have a steady income.
Let's go.